Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot, Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We're going to hear from Energy Fuels Management, including Mark Chalmers, President and CEO. Now, during today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we'll take some questions. You can type your questions into the text box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. So during today's webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of Energy Fuels corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, energyfuels.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight this webinar is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. And please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on energy fuels. Now, before we get into it, first a couple of words on uranium. Spot prices are up a couple of bucks this year. In my opinion, this is partially mine supply driven and partially physical demand driven. Now, we still await an increase in long-term contracting to support uranium prices on a sustainable basis. But we do believe that the current fundamentals are as strong right now as at any time over the past couple of decades. I do believe the nuclear industry is in good shape. There are 443 reactors in operation, and that's in line with 10 years ago. 54 reactors are under construction. Uranium demand continues to rise. Government support is increasing, particularly in the US, China, and Russia. China is on track to become the world's largest nuclear power producer, and uranium is getting recognition as a green energy source. Meanwhile, uranium supply has been falling. There have been significant mine curtailments, and the COVID-19 impact was severe. But with the decade of low prices, we have not seen the investment necessary to sustain production levels. We do notice the nuclear industry is even stronger than it was pre-Fukushima. Global demand about 177 million pounds of uranium. It's growing at between 2.5–3% annually, at least according to the World Nuclear Association. And the two largest producers, Kazatomprom and Cameco, have been buying in the spot market. The U.S., it is finally throwing its support behind the industry, and the physical market is suddenly surging. And that Sprott Uranium Trust has potential to improve visibility of uranium price and aid in price discovery and serve as an investment for big money that didn't necessarily get into the sector before. Our uranium production has declined to about 123 million pounds at least last year, and that has left a gap of about 54 million pounds between supply and demand. And that largely due with the fact that 35% of global production came offline for at least a portion of last year. And finally, long-term contracting. We believe this must return. We think this has been an overhang on the market unlike any other, and perhaps with more physical material being taken out of the market, the ongoing decline in uranium production, nuclear utilities will become a little bit more worried about security of supply and start contracting. So with that, Mark, I now turn it over to you to update the audience on energy fuels.
Thank you very much, David, for that introduction and that kind of snapshot of where the uranium business is as we speak. And really, it's my pleasure to talk to all of you about Energy Fuels, which we believe is a very, very exciting vehicle that covers all things reducing carbon emissions and electrification. And there really isn't any company like Energy Fuels that focuses, our main focus being uranium, but we're rapidly entering the rare earth element space, our ability to produce vanadium, emerging opportunities for medical isotopes, radioisotopes, and our recycling. So anyways, we'll get started, but this first picture on the front page is of the White Mesa Mill in Utah, where this is all happening. As David indicated, I may be making some forward-looking statements. Those are included at the back of the presentation. This presentation is also on our website. So again, energy fuels. I really don't think there's any peer group for energy fuels. Certainly, there are peer groups for the uranium producers or developers. That is our core business. That's where I've spent the bulk of my career, over 45 years in the uranium space around the world. We entered the rare earth element business about a year and a half ago. Very exciting how that complements with the uranium business. And also, we're more advanced for processing than any other company in all of the Americas. We're very proud of that. Did it very quickly. Vanadium is starting to emerge. We're the largest producer of vanadium in 2019. We've got a long history producing vanadium, and vanadium primarily used for high-strength alloys, but also increasing interest for grid-scale batteries for renewable energy storage. We also announced not too long ago the entrance into the medical isotope business, capitalizing on the radionuclides that we have at the White Mesa mill. And again, this is early days, but again, very exciting. I'll talk about that more. We have a long history of recycling uranium and vanadium, mainly uranium, and I'll talk more about that. That's the reason the White Mesa mill stood the test of time. And we have substantial financial strength and zero debt. We have in the order of $100 million at cash or working capital, and that probably is conservative with some of the things that have been happening that I'll also talk about. So our company has a strong commitment to sustainability, and we're pushing that harder because of the focus on, particularly by these ESG funds. Our company can reduce carbon emissions, recycle, and assist in electrification, probably greater than any company I know of our size. And we're very excited about that. And the sustainability report is on our website as well. Our footprint in the United States is quite large, from Wyoming all the way down to Texas. We have 3 fully licensed operable facilities, 2 in situ recovery, and the White Mesa mill. So no one else has 3 licensed facilities like we do. And we're very proud of that. And we're also very proud that they're fully permitted, operable, and debt-free. So when you look at the United States, a lot of people don't realize the United States gets 20% of its electric power from nuclear, and that represents 55% of the carbon-free electricity in the United States of America. Just another little bit more information on the 3 production centers, the White Mesa mill, which is producing. That is also where we recover the rare earths. And long history. It's about 40 years old. It's been refurbished 2 or 3 times. It's in good shape for a 40-year-old facility. And then we have the Alta Mesa ISR facility in Texas on standby. Nichols Ranch in Wyoming also on standby. And then we have the Pinyon Plain mine in Arizona, which is a largely developed underground uranium mine that I actually built in the late 80s. It's the highest grade and probably the lowest cost uranium project in the United States. Now this slide, picture tells 1,000 words. This really shows who has produced uranium in the United States over the last 15 years. If you look at the light blue, the 25 million, that is production from Cameco's assets in the United States. And if you look at the darker blue, that's 16.7 million pounds. That is uranium production from Energy Fuels assets. If you look at Cameco and Energy Fuels combined, 85% of the uranium produced in the last 15 years came from 2 companies alone. And if you include UR Energy, now they were not producing 15 years ago, and Cameco and Energy Fuels, 90% came from 3 companies. So the red is Uranium One, which is Russian owned. And if you include that, it's like 97%. So, I think it's very important that people understand that uranium production is not easy. It is not easy, and a lot of people talk about it, but they've never done it. And that is huge because the fallout rate of people that are not experienced producing uranium is huge. Typically 10% of what a lot of people claim is going to come to the market ever makes it to the market. So we have a long history, as does Cameco, and UR Energy. So we're best positioned. Those three companies are best positioned to produce material, economic uranium in the future. This is just where we sit with our uranium peers, even though, as I said, we really don't have any peers. We're kind of in the middle of the pack. A couple things I want to highlight is that we have about 700,000 pounds of uranium inventory that we produced. We didn't buy it, we produced it ourselves. A lot of people have bought uranium, and I think that may make sense for some of them, but a lot of cases they've never produced anything near to what they purchased. So I'd be aware of that. So we've had recent uranium production, including this year. We're the only one on that list that also has the ability to produce vanadium. We're the only one on the list that can recycle, the only one on the list that has the opportunity to recycle medical isotopes, which again is new and emerging. And lastly, and this is very significant, we're the only ones that have the ability and the licenses to produce rare earths. And that alone is massive when it comes to looking at our peer group. So why do rare earths and uranium go together? Well, it's simple. The best feedstocks of rare earths contain uranium and thorium, and most people, matter of fact, no one in North America can handle that like we can. And so we're focused on monazite, which is the highest grade monazite sands, highest grade feed material for rare earths, also contains uranium and thorium. And a number of people have said that Energy Fuels could be the missing link for rare earth production, not just in the United States and North America, but perhaps the world. And we have begun commercial production, small commercial, of an intermediate rare earth product at the White Mesa Mill from U.S. mine monazite. And no other company, as I said earlier, is more advanced when it comes to chemically processing rare earths in the United States than Energy Fuels. And we are not planning to stop at just cracking and leaching monazite sands at the White Mesa Mill. We plan to be in full integrated producer and processor of rare earth element materials in the next 2 to 3 years. It's probably closer to 3 years, but that's still rocket speed compared to others. And we believe White Mesa, being an existing fully paid for facility, is the key to restoring critical mineral production in all of the Americas. So why monazite? I touched on it a little bit. It's the most valuable rare earth element mineral. It's currently being produced at a number of existing mines. It's mined in the US, Australia, Brazil, Africa, and elsewhere. It's mainly a byproduct of heavy mineral sands production. These heavy mineral sands operations that are mainly focused on zirconium and titanium minerals. They also can produce monazite, as I said, as a byproduct. It is very high grade. It's between 50 to 60% total rare earths, which is the key differentiator on why this makes absolute sense, particularly processing at White Mesa Mill. Some of it can be over 60% total rare earths. It also contains high concentrations of uranium and other radionuclides. The contained uranium is about the equivalent to our typical ore grades that we've mined in the region around the White Mesa Mill, and that is why we can process it at the mill. It also has superior distributions of the high value elements of the rare earths, particularly the NdPr, which is the permanent magnet, high efficiency magnet elements, as well as heavies. And it is much higher grade. It has better distributions than what is commonly mined, which is bastnäsite, which is low in uranium and thorium, and also relatively low in the rare earth elements. So this is a very unique plan. We're basically replicating what China is doing with monazite sands, and we're the only ones that are doing that at this point in time. So this is one of the reasons we've been able to move so quickly and purposefully. So there's just a picture of the White Mesa Mill. And the person who's been saying that it's the missing link is Konstantin Karyanopoulos. Some of you will know Konstantin is probably the most successful person in the rare earth business in the entire world. He's the CEO of Neo Performance Materials, and we're very pleased that he's out there saying that to many. And as I said, it is the only facility in North America currently licensed and capable of processing monazite ores at scale. And that is a key differentiator. We are able to retrofit the mill with minor capital, about $2 million, to process, crack, and leach monazite at the mill. To put it in perspective, the mill that Lynas is building in Western Australia, a crack and leach facility only, it's going to cost them about $400 million. And we were able to retrofit the White Mesa mill for a couple million. To get up to the scale of Lynas, we might need to make investments of maybe $5 or $6 or $7 million. So we're off to a great start. We're currently processing up to about 2,500 tons of monazite, which just represents less than 1% of the mill's capacity. Our goal is to ramp this up. We're not limited on to what scale we can go, but we're currently focusing on ramping this up to around 15,000 tons of monazite feed or greater, which would be equivalent to 50% of the U.S. current requirements. So, we're very excited this for all the right reasons. And I also want to say the other differentiator is that we have the tailing cells to handle the tailings from the processing of the monazite feed. And we have 2 cells that are designed at RCRA standards for 1,000 years. And we almost are getting very near to getting 2 more cells permitted this year that would give us capacity of upwards of 5 million tons of tailings capacity for radionuclides. So just a little bit of what we're doing now. We have a short-term plan and a long-term plan. The short-term plan is basically the purchasing of natural monazite sand from heavy mineral sand production in the United States from Chemours in Georgia. We're currently doing that. We're seeking additional monazite supply in the United States and around the world. Every monazite producer in the world knows we exist. Every monazite producer in the world knows we are moving quicker than anybody else in the world on the monazite sand front. So watch this space because I hope we will have somebody else sign up soon for additional monazite supply to the mill. So, and then we're making the carbonate at the mill that we retrofitted with just a few $1 million I mentioned. And we are currently delivering cracked and leached uranium and thorium-free rare earth carbonate to Neo Performance Materials in Estonia. There is no separation capabilities in the United States yet until we build them, which is the long-term plan, which is out 2 to 3 years. We're going to have a U.S.-centric supply chain, and we will do rare earth separation on top of cracking and leaching as we build up the supplies of monazite sands to the front end of the mill. We also are having work done by Caristers out of France. They're the world leaders in designing and evaluating separation facilities in the world. They basically come out of Solvent in France, and they also help build out the Chinese separation capabilities in China. And so they are helping us with scoping work right now. And we're very pleased with their initial results, which indicate that our plan will be very capital efficient and very operating efficient based on sort of their initial findings. We also have over 40-year history of operating solvent extraction at the White Mesa Mill, which many believe is a real problem to not have SX experience, and we already do. So this is just what I've said in words graphically. The monazite ore, the White Mesa Mill, and the Neo Performance Materials, and then looking to the future, we plan to integrate this at the very least through separation at White Mesa, continuing our relationship with Neo, and we're starting to look at metals and alloys and powders, and we may look eventually at magnets, but we'll do it at a step at a time. So why can Energy Fuels succeed when others have struggled? Well, number one, we have the licenses and capabilities to handle the radionuclides and monazite. That is number one, and that is very key. Monazite has the high values that I talked about than other rare earth materials, and it has the great distributions. It is mined around the world. and it is available. It is straightforward from a processing perspective. It's actually simpler to process, low cost and capital efficient. As I mentioned, we are very, very confident that this is an economic outcome here that will stagger people in our ability to use existing infrastructure that's already constructed and to have capital and operating costs that are extremely world competitive, including with China. Typically, separation uses solvent extraction for recovery of the rare earth elements. We have 40 years of experience on this front. So when it comes to SX, we're not afraid of that. And we're already doing separations at lab scale at the mill with solvent extraction. And we hope to have some results in the not too distant future on that front. And I think, again, it will blow people away. Lastly, Utah is a great place to do business. It's a low cost jurisdiction, very strong, stable workforce. And we believe it's a better place to do business than places like California and Australia based on cost and labor availability. So this slide just shows kind of what we've accomplished in the 12 plus months. It's more like about 16 to 17, 18 months now. First, we engaged some of the world leading professionals in the rare earth space. Konstantin Karyanopoulos, who I mentioned, the most successful guy in the rare earth business, he came on board quite early, even though he's still working for NEO. Brock O'Kelly, who worked at Mountain Pass for 35 years, was VP of processing at Mountain Pass. Jack Lifton, that some of you will know, is kind of a world-renowned expert in rare earths. Frederick works for Carrister, who does the separation design and evaluation in France. And then recently, Chris Wyatt. And Chris worked for Aluka in Australia and in the United States. So he's become our heavy mineral sands advisor. Now, all those people are just consultants or advisors. They're not full-time employees, but we have gone to the top of the tree in all of these areas. Securing monazite sands, we already have a 3-year agreement with Chemours in Georgia. We also have an MOU with Hyperion that has a very exciting project in Tennessee. And we're talking to everybody else, as I mentioned before, that's producing monazite in the world, or everyone I know of. So, we plan to build to this list and show people this is going to happen. I mentioned we're ramping up the rare earth carbonate production at the mill. The first lot we did was about 300 tons. The next lot should be 600 to 800 tons. We should start that in a couple months. As I said, we're moving forward with SX separations capabilities. We have the pilot plant at site currently operating. And it's my goal that in less than 12 months' time, we put in all our plans for a complete renovation of the White Mesa mill to include through separation going forward. And we're very excited about that, but it will take some time. And we're evaluating the metals and alloys. And we have received around $2 million of government support on rare earths already. So where do we fit in with the rare earth peer group? You can see by the market caps that we're substantially lower than MP, Linus, and Luca, higher than some of the others that are less advanced. But our goal is to move up to be a multi-billion-dollar company, both with regard to our abilities to produce uranium, vanadium, and rare earths and the medical isotopes. So you can see the value of the monazite sands that we get from Georgia. Recovered. This is not the complete periodic table. It's just the main pain, heavy and light rare earths around $16,000 or $17,000 a ton, puts us at a distinct advantage over others based on grade. Grade is king in just about anything you do in the resource business. So vanadium, still very much an option. We have the ability to go back in vanadium production quite quickly and basically it probably is starting to make sense right now. We have nearly 1.8 million pounds of high purity vanadium in inventory at current prices. That's worth about 16 or 17 million dollars. So we do have a very interesting option with vanadium. Vanadium prices are up nearly double or nearly 100% since last year, the beginning of last year. So medical isotopes from thorium, this is new. We just announced at the end of July an arrangement with Radtran out of Denver. There is a world shortage of medical isotopes, and we think that we're in a unique position because we are like the isotope factory with the White Mesa Mill and the importation of monazite sands that include thorium. So we're really excited about this. It's early days. The focus is on these alpha therapy for cancer treatments, and we're already getting inbounds from people interested in the isotopes that White Mesa Mill could serve. A lot of the isotopes are drying up with people like the Department of Energy and around the world because there is no other sources to harvest, and White Mesa could be a unique opportunity in that regard. Uranium recycling, we've done this for decades. It's why the mill survived the test of time. We have recycled about 6 million pounds of uranium over those couple decades. That would be equivalent to a thermal coal train from California to New York and almost all the way back to California. So we're very proud of the amount of carbon emissions we've been able to reduce the emission of because of our ability to recycle the uranium. This is an opportunity that we've been working on for several years. It's very political, unfortunately, but it's very doable right now. And in fact, we're already doing it. This is where the White Mesa Mill is in southern Utah, the Four Corners region. Kind of the oranges is the Navajo Nation. The red dots are abandoned uranium mines that were either never reclaimed or poorly reclaimed from the 50s or 60s. We had nothing to do with these uranium mines. These were mainly mines that were mined by subsidies from the United States government. The government has collected nearly $2 billion in trust to clean them up, and they have yet to do so. And White Mesa Mill is in the ideal position to participate right now. Matter of fact, we are cleaning up one mine in the little green star that's between Grants and Albuquerque. It's a private mine. It's a Mount Taylor mine. We're currently having material, about 5 trucks a day, loaded up and shipped to the White Mesa Mill from the Green Star to the Blue Star. And we get paid a fee and we get the uranium for free. The lowest uranium cost production in the world is this, because we get paid to get the uranium for free, and we can process uranium when the time is right for basically zero. So I did a webinar with Red Cloud a few weeks ago on the accretive disposition of some of our non-core assets to International Consolidated Uranium. We're very excited about that. I have a long history with Phil Williams. These are great mines. Matter of fact, these are mines that have produced more uranium than just about any other uranium producer in the United States. Actually, when I talked about Cameco Energy Fuels and UR Energy and Uranium One, between those four were the top 4 in the United States. The assets we sold to CUR, International Consolidated Uranium, would put them in 5th place ahead of the others with proven projects, permitted, able to produce. And so we haven't closed it yet, but we're close to closing. The consideration is in the order over progress payments, about $24 million. Will become CUR's biggest shareholder at 19.9%. We'll get a limited amount of cash and some progress payments. So watch this space. These are really good assets, and we just didn't have time to focus on them, and CUR will. So just a bit on our balance sheet. Our balance sheet, very strong, around $100 million, which is conservative. That includes inventories valued in that little table that shows uranium prices at 23 and vanadium at 5 that have gone up 40 to 90% in the last this year. When you uprate that, just the value of current inventories, it goes up by at least $10 million. We've also had some warrants from a financing 4.5 years ago that are coming in. You can uprate that by another $10 million. And it doesn't include the closing of the CUR deal, where we'll become their largest shareholder. You can uprate that by another 10, 15 to $20 million. So we are in great financial position to execute all our plans going forward. So again, very, very excited about how strong we are to execute our plans. So just in closing, there really is no peer to Energy Fuels because what we do on the uranium front, second largest producer of uranium in the United States. Over time, recently the largest. Very proud of that. I've been doing this for my whole career since I was 18 years old. The rare earths, we're not getting the value out of what this and how this is advancing yet. This is a real opportunity. Vanadium, I mentioned, medical isotopes coming quickly, but early. The recycling and our financial strength is extremely strong. And so, as I said, if you're looking for an investment to reduce carbon emissions, baseload energy, electrification, this is a one-stop shop. So again, I'll now end and turn it over for questions that you may have about Energy Fuels.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Mark. Great presentation as always. We're going to now kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar. So please feel free to type in any questions you have into the into the chat box. I forgot to type into the chat box to elicit some questions, but we already have several of them. So Mark, would you consider uranium as your core business? You seem to have sold some assets here. The focus seems to be shifting away and into rare earths and even medical isotopes. What's your comment to investors on that front?
Well, look, uranium is still our core focus. I mean, the problem, Dave, is that we have so many assets that we don't have time to do them justice. And that's why we divested or divesting the assets to International Consolidated Uranium is we don't even have time to really spending time on those assets. They are good assets. I mean, look at it. It's a very dynamic period for our company. And as I said, the common denominator is uranium and radionuclides. And so when we put material into the mill, we can recover the uranium, the vanadium, or recover the rare earths and the isotopes. So they're all connected. And as I said, I've been doing this for 45 years. I've got a huge passion for the uranium business. But because they all contain radionuclides, it makes sense to focus on them right now as a whole and divest these assets that we don't have time to look at.
Okay, so it's really that uranium content that's in the rare earths that makes this an opportunity for you guys, something that no other company can really deal with immediately.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be able to process the rare earths if it didn't have that uranium content. It's interesting. If you look at a lot of people's rare earth presentations, they say, well, we have low uranium, we have low thorium. Okay, we want high uranium and high thorium. We want it because that is, one, we can monetize it. Two, we can address it. And there's feed sources out there that have been ignored because of the uranium and the thorium content. So, so it is really unique, but we need uranium to process it at White Mesa. Our licenses require us to have contained uranium.
Right. Okay. Are there other non-core assets you guys might look to divest or partner with others?
Look, I don't want to say no, but we want to keep our front stable, intact, and ready to go. Maybe, but look, right now, I feel very comfortable with what we've either divested, which the first things we divested were the lowest quality that we divested, but these assets that we held for a long time and produced from, that we divested to International Consolidated Uranium is a step up above what we divested in the past.
Mm-hmm. And then how quickly can you return some of your uranium assets to production as prices rise? And would ISR production or conventional production come first?
Yeah, look, it's, it would take about a year's time. One of our lowest cost, largest to market would be the Pinyon Plain mine because of its grade and the fact that the shaft is sunk and we're within about 10 feet of the ore body. That's probably the quickest to market in terms of the closest to ready to go. But so is Nichols Ranch and Alta Mesa. They basically just need new well fields installed. So we can get going really quickly with the with new uranium production. We also have some pretty substantial and building stockpiles of uranium at the mill from this material that we received from Mount Taylor, this cleanup material, plus what we've mined at the LaSalle mine. So, we're in a good position to start ramping up really quickly on the uranium front within 12 months.
Okay, no, you perfect lead in onto a couple of my next questions there. You mentioned Pinyon Plain uranium project there. That's essentially a mine that's built, and you found some copper there recently to help improve economics. Do you have any other exploration plans for Arizona to maybe to bring on around the same time as Pinyon Plain? Or
well, right now, I would say our main focus is on the Pinyon Plain. Yeah, it does have some very high grade copper, but it's limited. It's very high grade. It's almost 10% copper. If it was bigger, I mean, the biggest balance now, the price of copper has gone up, is just the amount of infrastructure that would have to be put in at the mill to recover that copper. We don't have any known other sources of copper to go to that are at the scale that we have at Pinyon Plain. With regard to our other breccia pipes around or in the vicinity of Pinyon Plain, a lot of those are grandfathered. They're not excluded from these exclusions on around the canyon that some of the other developers are impacted by. They've been grandfathered. So yeah, we're not actively exploring the new sites at this point in time, but Dave, as you're probably aware, I've mined like 5 or 6 breccia pipes in the region earlier in my career. So, they can fit in really nicely at the right timing.
yeah, you don't find high grades like that anywhere else in the U.S. So perfect.
Correct.
Okay. Do you see the cleanup of uranium on the Navajo Nation as a business opportunity? How's that progressing?
Yeah, look, it is a huge business opportunity because we can use the mill, we can recover the uranium from that low-grade ores that were left behind. There's this nearly $2 billion in trust. The unfortunate thing with that is it's become political. A number of the NGOs have basically told the Navajos, told the government, they don't want us to clean it up and use the White Mesa Mill because they don't want to benefit us. The NGOs would rather not clean up these projects than have us benefit, which is really pathetic. Mm-hmm. But we're working on it. We haven't given up on it. We're doing the Mount Taylor project right now. It makes perfect sense. But it's been a hard slog, and that's been the biggest frustration is that the NGOs are trying to prevent the Navajo Nation from being cleaned up properly.
Yeah, but the EPA has put aside a couple $2 billion to clean that up, right? It's not.
Yes, they have, and they are doing some cleanup here and there. So yeah, no, we're still optimistic it'll come in time for the right reasons. Why would you not use White Mesa to clean that up? That is one of the reasons we went out and started permitting 2 additional tailing cells so that we could clean up the entire Navajo Nation. And that still is in the realm of possibilities if the politics get sorted out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Vanadium uranium prices are up here somewhat in the last little while. Your working capital is rising. How long do you plan to sit on your inventories of uranium and vanadium? And any chance to liquidate those and create some revenue?
Yeah, look, I think there is a chance. I mean, we've been holding both of them because we think that the replacement value is greater than the current values. Now, when it comes to vanadium, I mean, we'll look at both of them on opportunely when it comes time to liquidate some of that. But yeah, look, I think vanadium prices get around $10 plus. Maybe we liquidate some, but we like having inventories because it gives us a lot of flexibility going forward, whether it comes to contracts. I mean, a lot of our uranium is U.S. origin, unobligated material. The vanadium we have is very high purity. So, we may look at liquidating some of that in the not too distant future, but we don't feel we're in a rush to do so.
Okay, great. Let's move on a little bit. Talk about rare earth production. Now, you did talk about this a little bit earlier on the call. How is the rare earth ramp up going, and have all 15 containers been shipped to Neo Performance?
Geez, I have to check exactly. I think we've got 14 or 15 that have been packaged. I think maybe 10 or 12 have left to Neo. There might be a couple left. Now we're just waiting for the next batch of monazite sands from Chemours in Georgia. The next lot, starting I think in October, is supposed to be about 600-800 tons. So it's a little over double what we've just processed. Chemours has had a few problems operationally with their site. They're trying to resolve that. They're trying to rectify and build up larger quantities of monazite, but it hasn't impacted us directly, Dave, because the quantities that we're dealing with are large enough to where actually we've been able to refine our ability to process in terms of each step in the process cycle, in terms of what we've learned in terms of things like recovery, reagent consumption, retention time, things like that. So we've been making good use of the time while we've had a little less material to process, not because of our fault or our problems. We're making good use of that time, but we believe that we're very, very well positioned as time progresses to ramp up. As I said, there's no real limit on us to ramp up at the mill with the existing facility.
Okay, so you'd say that's one of your options here. My next question was: is there risk of Chemours' monazite supply in Georgia to be further disrupted? And if so, what are your options? Is monazite the only feed source you consider?
Yeah. Well, as I said, we're talking to everybody that produces monazite in the U.S. and around the world. There are sources of monazite out there. I mean, we really don't need large quantities of monazite right now, because the best economic outcome is when we have the ability to separate at the mill. Okay. So, right now, Silmet is about a 2,500 ton per year REO plant. So it's a fairly small plant. So we could capacitate that with large quantities very quickly. And then it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So Chemours is a big player in the heavy mineral sand business. They're having some issues. They're looking at how they can expand. But meanwhile, we've got the relationship with Hyperion, and as I said, we're talking to everybody else, and everybody else gives us. They are amazed at how quickly we're moving. And we're getting on the radar screens with everybody. Okay, some of them are already shipping 100% of the material to China because that was the only option they have, and they now realize there is an emerging opportunity for a second processor of the monazite sand. So I'm not concerned over the long term at all. I believe it's going to come, and it's coming. Right now, a little bit short, but we plan to make it up.
Okay, and what are the costs of bringing your mixed monazite, you mined monazite to Utah from Georgia or Tennessee? These aren't really large volumes. Maybe 2% of mill capacity in total, but it's high value material.
Yeah. If you look at the separated value, as I said in that one chart, is around $17,000 a ton when you have the ability to separate it. So it's high value. I believe the cost of shipment from Georgia is $300 or $400 a ton. The cost of shipping monazite from even some of the most remote places in the world are around about $1,200 US a ton. So when you look at $16,000, $17,000 a ton versus a max for shipping of around $1,200, you can see how it's not really shipping sensitive. Most of these monazites, if they're shipped, from Africa or Australia or whatever, it's going to cost at least $400 or $500 a ton to get it to China anyway. So, and this is important. The material has to depart a lot of these remote locations anyways, because there's no use for those finished products, in the middle of Africa. or even in Australia. It needs to get to China, Europe, or the United States for final consumption. So you're looking at 50, 60% of what's in a ton of monazite is actually saleable material.
Right, right. Okay. And, you currently make an intermediate product, it's a mixed rare earth carbonate. Can you discuss your plans and your timeline of becoming vertically integrated, producing rare earth oxides and alloys and the like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are looking at, as I said, getting all the information we need to submit a comprehensive document within the next 12 months to the state of Utah. We believe we have, most, if not all, permits, but we may need a few. So we plan to get more information from caristers. We are also re-engaging ANSTO to help peer review some of our work. And we look at doing a completely full integrated plan to the state of Utah. We think it'll take about a year to do that. And then, based on when they receive that, they'll give us more feedback in terms of the timing. But we don't see it as being like lots of years or multiple years. They're excited to work with us, we believe, for the right reasons. So, realistically, you're probably looking at about 3 years to get to full integration, which again is very quickly. And as I said earlier, sort of the initial feedback that we're getting from caristers is, this will be a low CapEx and OpEx operation, world scale.
Yeah, so defining low CapEx, we're talking maybe 150, 200 million, right? This is not multi-hundred million.
Yeah. I mean, we think that it's in that 150, 250 million to get up to in the order of 20,000 tons a year of REO, which is in the same order as what Linus is. I mean, but we need more molecules. We need the feed, and I just want to point out that that China doesn't have the monazite sand mines. They have the processing capability, and they built the processing capacity, and then the feed showed up. So we're doing the same thing the Chinese are doing. Yeah, it'd be nice to have a monazite sand mine right out the door from the mill, but we don't. But we believe there's, as I said, there's a number of mines out there in the world that are processing monazite, and they have really 3 choices. They bury it, which most of them over time have been burying it because they didn't want to deal with it. They ship it to China, they ship it to Energy Fuels, and very few are going to be burying it in the future because it has a value.
And how much support has the U.S. government shown towards the production of rare earths in country? The White House white paper on the infrastructure bill specifically mentioned rare earth separation specifically. Right?
Yeah. Look, we were late to the party. As you know, Dave, we didn't even announce we're getting in the rare earth space until about a year and a half ago. There were a number of other parties that have been in the rare earth business for decades that got in the door ahead of us. So there were some awards that were given out in front of us. If we had been involved in the rare earth space a few years earlier, I think we would have received some of those larger awards. But the thing that excites me the most about our plans is we can do it, we believe, on our own. We will not need subsidies to be competitive for capital or operating costs. I think that speaks volumes. If we can get support from the government, I certainly will consider it and accept it if it's appropriate. But we don't need subsidy. We do not need subsidies when most companies are saying they need subsidies to go forward. We don't. Would we like it? Absolutely. But I think that's what's really exciting about this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Have you speculated at all how the Afghan exit might impact control of rare earths or strategic metals?
I really haven't. I mean, you see a lot in the press on it, but I really haven't. I mean, we're still basically running our own game. We're not trying to hurt anybody or put anybody else out of business or really competing with anybody else. We're just, driving our own bus. And, our focus is really twofold right now. Aside from, our uranium assets, keeping them in good working order and ready to go as markets improve. It's to show the market that we have the ability to get the full integration. And every day I get more and more confident that that's going to be a real slam. I hate to use the word slam dunk, but with our experience, with the cost, the strike rate, and all that it's something we can manage without any major issues. And it's about getting the molecules in the front. So those are the two things: show the market that we're going to be able to get to integration, and show the market that there's building interest besides Chemours and Hyperion, that another 1 or 2 or 3 groups join us to provide molecules to the plant. And I think when you can show the market those two things, it's going to be game on.
Okay, and then on to the medical isotopes. When might investors expect an update on RadTrans studies? Figure out what you might or might not be able to do.
Yeah, well, it's really an interesting one. I think I've told people that it wasn't just RadTran that came to the front door on this concept. We probably had 3 or 4 companies show up with the concept, and we were just starting to get into our groove with them. We meet with them weekly, and the interesting part is that for us, a lot of people's trash, which is the radioisotopes, could be our treasure. And so no, look at the activity level is already picking up. I've already got inbound calls from people that are in the isotope business, and they've seen the announcements, and they're keenly interested in what we could do and contribute there, particularly for fresh isotopes. A lot of these isotopes have short half-life, so they need fresh isotopes, and we're a better place to get them than White Mesa. I mean, the Chinese are recovering the thorium as well. So look, at timing it's early days, so I don't want to get on the limb on timing, but I think there will be news flow in the next few months, on some of the steps we're taking there, and I'm really excited about how isotopes, uranium and thorium, add credits, either credits or potential credits, when other people will waste those. They'll waste them. They'll bury them because they don't want to deal with them.
Yeah. Okay. Energy fuels. The story is amazing, yet it has little interest from investors, at least according to the question. Why, in your opinion, does the story not currently resonate in the market?
I think people don't understand it. I think it's a little bit too complicated for people. It's easier to think about just uranium or just rare earths or just vanadium. It doesn't. And that's kind of frustrating for me because I try to tell the story as clearly as I can. But I am highly confident that when it resonates, it's going to be too late for some investors. I think they're going to realize we're doers. We think big, but we're aggressive, but we're not reckless. We have a strong balance sheet. But I think we trade like with the uranium stocks, and we offer so much more, and it's real stuff. It's not phony stuff. We're not pulling this stuff out of our back end and dreaming up these ideas. A lot of times, the rare earth story and the isotope story, people showed up at the doorstep multiple times and said, what about this? What about this? And then we said, how can we not look at this more seriously? So,
right.
Watch the space. I think it is frustrating that it's not really recognized, but I think that once we start showing, like for example, the rare earths, we've got the molecules coming in, the ability to do the value adds. I think people will understand real clearly what the plan was and how it was executed.
Yeah. Okay, great. We're coming up towards the top of the hour, so I do have a couple more questions, really opinion pieces here for you. How do you see the U.S. strategic uranium reserve moving forward? Do you think that's going to make a big difference in uranium prices, at least for the U.S. producers?
Yeah. Look, it's personally, it's fairly frustrating how slow that's been. It's been, in the works for actually years now. It's been appropriated. It's got bipartisan support. Government's trying to figure out how to administrate it. I think it has a potential to make a difference, a massive difference. I don't see it as massive difference, but I do think that it reiterates the government support and the need for unobligated U.S. produced uranium. We're looking at it as hopefully a multi-year program, not just a single year that's currently appropriated. But yeah, it's been moving slower than it should. But a lot of it reflects back to a lot of work that was done by Energy Fuels and UR Energy from the beginning. Sure, there's been support from others, but it really originated out of UR Energy and Energy Fuels working together to get some attention from the U.S. government. So we put in a lot of money, a lot of skin, and a lot of time to get it to where it is, and I just wish it'd move faster.
For sure. So hopefully they can get to the point where 150 million might look to buy almost 2 million ounces. So
2 million pounds. Yeah, somewhere in the order. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, and then finally, what's your opinion of the new Sprott Uranium Trust? Are you surprised by its positive impact over such a short period already?
Look, I think it bodes well for the future. I think one of the biggest advantages is getting a lot of attention. I think that whenever you kind of get back into the mainstream, that somebody like Sprott has taken interest in the uranium space, I think that's a real plus. It is, mopping up some of this uranium that's floating around in the market. It gives more transparency to the market. So yeah, no, I'm absolutely not against it. I think it's good. I think it just bodes well for the future. I mean, the world is not going to be able to decarbonize without nuclear power. And I think that's exactly what Sprott's betting on, that we need uranium, and the cost of buying it now is a lot less than the cost of producing it now.
Great. Okay. Well, why don't we wrap it up there? So thank you very much, Mark, Energy Fuels, for joining us today. So,
my pleasure, Dave. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. A reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow morning. Tim is going to sit down with Cerrado Gold. That's Tuesday, August 31st at 11 a.m. Eastern. So hope to see you then. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.